I just want to stress how much it's kind of affected people mentally.
This year I've been working with young people throughout the entirety of England, asking how the pandemic has affected them. UCL and the Ubele initiative teamed up and using sources like Maptioneer asked questions about people's employment, mental health, financial status and education. We wanted to target the 18 to 35-year-old demographic because we feel like their voices are unheard. Following the stories of these young people, we can see how inspirational they are when navigating space through a global pandemic.
Spent the entire year indoors, and it really had me just thinking and reflecting about life. My community has changed so much. The area of Elephant and Castle has changed a lot. The shopping centre is gone, it's closed, and a lot of the small businesses have moved where the new builds are, and everything just feels really different in the area. And to me, it's quite saddening because it feels like the community is changing, yet it doesn't feel like there's any physical community because we've all been isolating at home, and each time I go outside, I feel somewhat like a stranger.
I was working a full-time job, like a great job that I loved in higher education at the time. You know, I was somewhat happily married, kind of living the suburban dream, and having all of that time for introspection and really having to sit and reckon with yourself and deal with who you are. It's a very difficult journey, but it's very, very empowering and eye-opening.
How it's affected me, like this whole situation, this whole pandemic, is just like, obviously you've got certain family members who come from older background or who are very like paranoid about the situation. So I haven't been able to spend a lot of time with them. I haven't been able to see them as usual or as normal, as frequent or as freely.
But I think I miss the more innocuous things about physically interacting with people, like physical humor, or like the more not even innocent parts of physical intimacy of like just when you're on a screen there. I do have that thought sometimes of like, is this even real? Like, is this actually happening? Is it like, am I real? Like, are you real? Is this like, if I just stop speaking, would this conversation cease to exist?
I found freelance work, which has been great, and some more kind of self-employed stuff, which has also been really good. It gave me time to focus on the creative things that I wanted to do anyway, and I had been saying that I was going to, work just being a creative and not work for the man anymore.
One minute they were saying, oh, it's going to be for 3 weeks. And then 3 weeks came and they were like, nope, we're going to stay here for a bit longer. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be the rest of our lives now.
I always thought that it would be really, really difficult for me to, be away from people and stay inside. But I think I've discovered that I am an introverted extrovert, and I'm not enjoying this time, but it's given me a lot of time to reflect and also kind of work on hobbies that I otherwise wouldn't have the time for.
Like at first I was like, yo, this is a bit crazy. Is this the kind of stuff that we've been expecting, like from what we watched in the films? But I kind of knew that it was a load of rubbish, really, from when I started to notice like how they're trying to make certain restrictions and put them in place. And it was like, well, really, how is that possible?
The restrictions on my movement were they weren't necessarily stark because I'm naturally introverted. Also, I thought, I've discovered during the pandemic that I'm probably an extrovert that just never found my crew or my people.
I spend most of my time at home around the people I live with is a feeling of autonomy, like feeling like I can just do my own thing for most of the day and not feel questioned or made to feel bad for making certain choices. that autonomy has kind of given me this wider sense of safety, I guess, and I really appreciate that.
I miss university classes being in person, because I feel like it's like limited the amount of friends I could have been making in my third year, because now you just log into Zoom and you have your class and then it's over, and there's no chatting to like one-on-one people, say like when you're waiting to go into the classroom or whatever.
It was definitely a kind of disassociative period, I think, like in terms of what we were doing, and a lot of my work was kind of just helping other people, and I think I kind of neglected myself in that, because I was just thinking of, does this young person have support, does this young person's family have support, what can we do to help them? And it would just be continuous.
When they started coming out with people from black and ethnic minority backgrounds are most likely to get it, then that's where you start to see the targeting of like our people, and you start to see that they're just trying to fearmonger people of all races. Yeah, they're trying to fearmonger everyone, but especially also black people.
Yo. So tip number 1 was something that I had to learn pretty early on, and it was creating a routine. When you wake up, you make things easy for yourself. So for example, if you want to read, I'll put my book right there. So when I wake up, I can pick up my book, I can read a chapter, and I can keep it moving. You have to make things a process, one to the next. So I'll read my book, but potentially I could read my book as I'm walking downstairs, and then when I'm downstairs, that will lead me to make my breakfast, because I'll be in the kitchen. Whilst I'm in the breakfast, I'll be listening to a podcast about self-development, and that will really put my mind into gear. It could be a self-development podcast about fitness, because then I'll be like, okay, cool, once I've done what I need to do in the kitchen, tea, breakfast, whatever, listening to this fitness podcast, I'll be ready to do a workout. I can come upstairs, do a bit of a workout. Get your sleep, which is super important, and set a routine. That's what's really helped me, because at the start everything was a big mess.
And this idea of navigating this space and this lockdown and being quarantined and isolated, and I've been shielding in place, as I said, for the majority of a year, and completely changed my lifestyle.
I've just been struggling a bit with like my race in the house, and this isn't against any of my housemates, but I am like the only one of color in my house, and sometimes I can feel it more, maybe because like I'm in the house just a lot more.
I've become very aware that I'm not really an individual in this time. Like I'm very much connected to networks, and I'm very much like carrying around the people I live with, people I interact with around me.
I've really appreciated being able to put boundaries in place in my home living situation. And by that I just mean like closing my doors at particular times, and having the space to kind of just be on my own and process things, because myself, along with so many people I live with, are spending most of their time at home.
Despite the fact that I live at home with my family, it's still important that I'm also self-sufficient while living at home. And I didn't really ask for any support, because we're all struggling at the end of the day, and I didn't feel in a space to even ask for any financial support or anything from my family members. So I really had to make do with what I had.
The second thing I had to get used to was sorting out a place where I could do my work from, a place that was a space of zen for me and had a perfect feng shui. After, developing a routine, you have to have a place that you enjoy sitting and doing your work, in essence, because, I've been working at home since March last year. That is a long time ago. It's almost 12 months. Me being an extrovert, I'm the extrovert of all extroverts, and when I'm at the office, I was out and about buzzing around like a bee. Having to switch that to being at home alone, was so difficult to get used to. But I thought, what's the best thing for me to do in order to be, happiest in the situation I'm in? And, I've managed to move my room around, set my desk in a way where, I'm happy to sit down, and I feel I want to be productive, and I'm enjoying what I look at, slightly minimalist, a place that you're kind of proud of. And I feel like that's definitely something everyone needs to kind of implement. Have a space, whether it be for work, whether it be for meditation or fitness, just have a space you like being in and you like doing things that you want to do. And that's definitely something I recommend.
When I was offered the vaccine, I went for it, kind of thing, with all the like research and evidence that was like published during 2020 about BME population being affected the most by COVID and whatnot. I was like, I will definitely be taking the vaccine. I'm ready to. I come into contact with COVID patients all the time. Like, I want to feel safe, you know?
The way I managed to get the people who were hesitant in my family to think about it was that if there was some mass plan to kill Black people or cause them ill health and such, they wouldn't need a sophisticated fake vaccination program to do it.
I remember applying for a job that I felt quite qualified for, finding out that 400 people had applied for this one position, and it just felt really daunting, especially having just come out of full-time education. So I've ended up kind of relying more on building my own employment opportunities and thinking out of the box to try and find some form of stable employment.
You know, Black and ethnic minorities have been affected so badly by the pandemic in terms of work and stuff, that was a bit of a like, okay, if at least if we're consistent with the rules, we'll be out this sooner. I think as well, like I know a lot of, so including loads of my family members and like loads of my friends' family members who have been me, like support in the gig economy. So, you know, support for taxi drivers, support for delivery drivers, support for anyone who's in the gig economy, because that's where a lot of BME employees are.
It helped me because I wasn't working at the time. Obviously, I'm a student, so I decided just to start my own like side hustle, my business, where I opened up like cooking food. Yeah, and it's been going great. Like,
and the last thing I suggest is to look after your mental health, and the main way of doing that I found is to do things you truly enjoy. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. You know, we are at home, we can spend time to ourselves. You know, we have eliminated the time you usually take to travel to work. That could be, you know, between 1 and 3 hours a day. You have to kind of like reassign that time to doing things you truly enjoy. So I, for example, have started running quite a lot now, and I really find it as a good way to wind down my day. And I would never even thought about doing that if I hadn't been at home for so long, you know, just finding ways to kind of spend my time. And I'm reading a lot more, I've started my own business. These are things that potentially may never have happened if this whole lockdown thing hadn't happened, you know. And I suppose we have to take the positives out of this whole situation and run with that rather than focus on the negatives. And that kind of goes back around to what I was saying about mental health. You really need to look after yourself, especially men. You know, 3 out of 4 people who take their life in the UK are male, and it's becoming more of a topic that we speak about amongst males, amongst the wider population. That's fantastic. And you know, I've done a lot of YouTube lives throughout this whole lockdown as well. I feel like that's a good way to connect with people and really speak about how we feel. And I'm really happy I've managed to realign myself and focus on things that I truly enjoy, and you know, put all this energy into things that I really like doing.
People are talking about it so much more, and even just the fact that like people who maybe hadn't struggled with mental health previously are now struggling with their mental health, and now it's like everybody wants to talk about it, you know, because that same CEO or that same person who's normally quite high functioning or hadn't really had those difficult brushes with depression and melancholia and seasonal affective disorder and anxiety and OCD and intrusive thoughts and all the rest of it, you know, and is suddenly kind of in a position where they are feeling that.
Going back into lockdown during the winter months took another toll on my mental health, and it was really, really hard. Like, I'm in a small flat with 4 of my other family members, and at a certain point you're gonna butt heads.
But I think it's most adversely affected my 8-year-old son, and in terms of socializing, mental stimulation, being able to just be himself without having mommy and daddy as teacher and Judge Dredd in his life. And that's been the most difficult thing to navigate, in all honesty, as there is a lot, there is so much. It takes a village, you know, it really does take a village to raise a child, and our circles are so much smaller than they were generations ago when it comes to child rearing. And So the school is one of the limited spaces that provides stability and consistent support. And that was just like yanked away and wasn't efficiently replaced.
To rely on online forms of communication to sustain relationships. I just feel like there needs to be that like wholeness to an interaction that you don't get when something is online.
I mean, I've dabbled in and out of therapy throughout my years. I've had like, you know, some complex childhood trauma and all the rest of it. But this was the first time that I really took therapy seriously. And throughout the many months that I was in therapy, I came to realize that actually my life, I wasn't living my life the way I wanted to live it. And so not only did it allow me to open my eyes to that, it also gave me the tools to make decisions, to turn my life in a different direction, really. And all in all, that is something that I don't think I ever would have done had a global pandemic not hit and really just given me time to sit and realize how flipping short life is.
I broke up with my girlfriend at the time. We'd been going out 2 years, and I know a lot of people who that happened for during the pandemic, and for that to happen just a couple of months into not being able to see each other meant that it's been really hard to process it, and to not be able to meet other people during this time period. It's felt hard to get over it and move forwards. Fingers crossed.
Like the government, they have not been educating people on how to strengthen your immune system, strengthen your mind, because so many young men and women have been dying of suicide during this pandemic. People have lost their jobs, people have lost their relationships, people are just down, people can't go nowhere.
I miss those interactions that you have without thinking about space so much.
Well, some pretty chunky remnants of the pre-pandemic world are still persisting and may just continue to persist, maybe even be exacerbated, because the people who are in the more negative space may feel that, oh, we've done enough for all these black folk, we've done all this work for gender equality and all this work for the planet. That's enough of that now. Let's get back to business.
There's been a lot of times during this pandemic to actually find things that you want to do and, you know, make decisions about your life, because life can be so short. And I think that's what this pandemic has even revealed, that like you really have to take every opportunity and not sit idly by and think that life is, you know, eternal, because I guess life on earth isn't really eternal.
Your serotonin levels are boosted when you take a walk in some greenery, and that is so underrated. Like, I will never ever look at my local park in the same way again when we come out of the other end of this pandemic, and it will definitely be a lifeline to me. Yeah, so 10,000 steps a day, yeah, really helped.
I've written an entire EP that's coming out soon, and yeah, it's just been really nice to be able to just get out of my head and like work through whatever emotions it is, whether it be sadness, anger, you know, happiness, joy, whatever I've been feeling throughout lockdown. It's been nice to express it through music.
It had me force myself to face my fears, face the things that I wanted, force me to make certain choices. And I'm an ambitious woman, I'm a hardworking woman, I'm a determined woman, and I'm someone who doesn't stand for unfairness. And discovering my purpose in life has been one absolutely positive thing that has come from 2020.
This project has been amazing. I'm so grateful to be a part of it, and so grateful to have had this thing to do. And I mean, not even just this kind of, you know, this stuff for film and doing these recordings and kind of having this like outlet and kind of almost video diary, Big Brother style, you know, thing, place to kind of talk and think and kind of process my ideas and stuff. But it was so wonderful having like-minded people to meet up with and talk with. You know, yes, it's via Zoom, but having a project to work towards, having something to focus on has been so valuable and so wonderful. And I just think, you know, Ubele and UCL have done an amazing job with that. And yeah, it's just been wonderful. And I'm so grateful to have been a part of it.
It's clear to see that COVID-19 has affected us all in many different ways. It's also truly inspirational to see how young people have adapted to navigating space during these times. We're hoping that after watching this, you're able to take something positive whilst navigating your journey through COVID-19.
I will be watching very closely to how quickly and efficiently they reinstate our right to assembly, because it's very important.